Hello, this is Idodmg and welcome back to the channel. In this Dungeons of Edera video, I want to talk about this indie action RPG and just kind of go back to the roots of where I started the channel from. And that is indie games. Indie games are my honest true passion. I love trying to find that one hidden gem that's out there that just not many people know about. There's just something magical to me about indie games, and I'm here to talk about this specific game. Is this game the gem that we've all been looking for? No, but it does possibly have potential in my opinion. It is a little bit early still and bare bones, but we're going to go ahead and talk about it, what the game entails, and if it's something that you think you want to support or not. A little bit of background before we really deep dive in on Dungeons of Edera. This game did come out 3 months ago, back in August 2020. I played very briefly back then, and it was very early, very buggy, and I didn't really enjoy it, to be honest. So I shelved it. I just came back 3 months later, and it has really improved drastically. I've been playing Godfall recently, and once I checked out this indie game, this Dungeons of Edera game, the combat just felt so much better to me. The combat to be better than a AAA game, I mean, that alone there made me want to invest time in and play the game. And I've enjoyed my time. I have about 10 hours into the game, and I could continue to play. But we'll go ahead and jump in and really dig in here and talk about what there is in the game and what you can expect with the price tag of $14.99. Dungeons of Edera is a hub-based action RPG. It is single player. It does have a third-person camera, but also has an option for a first-person perspective camera as well. But overall, what really makes this game special to me is it's rogue light. There's one mechanic in the game, and this is soulbound gear. When you find gear, it can be soulbound. More than likely, the gear that you find will not be soulbound, though. The soulbound gear tends to be very rare. But what it means is if you have equipment on and you happen to die, anything that's not soulbound is lost on death. There is a stash in the game where you can keep items safe at, so this is a nice alternative as well. But anything that you take out with you out into the battlefield that's not soulbound and you manage to die, just keep in mind you can lose the items from that. There's also an option to play on hardcore as well. That's really the only thing that makes this game roguelike at all. Simply dying in the game doesn't restart the whole story or anything like that. You just fail the mission and you can retry the mission again until you finally overcome the challenge. But that's what I want to talk a little bit about next is quests, missions, and the world, I guess. Dungeons of Edera is a hub-based game. There are currently 2 hubs in the game that you can come across. Hopefully more to come. I finished the current story in the game, which the story that's currently in there was rather short. And I know that there's another act being worked on. I have no idea what the timeline is for that. Hopefully soon, though. And so there's the 2 hubs. And then you also have about 5 different map types. So it's already more diverse in terms of maps than, say, Godfall is, which is another thing that really stood out to me. I did find myself getting a little bit bored with the maps, though, and just wanting more maps and events and things to happen. Because every map is set up the same, basically. You have 2 different types of quest or mission events, I guess. You have one that's just your dungeon crawl, and then you also have one where you have to defend a point from hordes of enemies that are coming in. But the dungeon crawl one it's pretty basic. Like I said, there's like 5 different maps. You go through, you kill enemies, there's treasure chests to loot, traps to dodge, and there's always a boss at the end, which once you've killed that boss, you can then acquire a boon, which is a permanent buff. And there's no cap on how many of these boons and buffs you can have. So if you wanted to, you can just roll through loads of dungeons and get super, super buffed up through these boons. Totally possible if you're willing to put in the time and grind towards that. But that's how all the missions are really set up in the maps. Throughout the story and kind of progressing your character, you're going to have story missions and side missions. Some of the story missions have you collecting different things, saving different people, doing different things that you would expect, but it's nothing really special, and it really doesn't break up the map grind, I guess. One thing I found a little bit interesting while doing missions is you can pick which difficulty you want to play on. When you first start out, you have the choice between easy, medium, or hard. Easy grants you green quality gear, medium gives you blue quality gear, and hard gives you purple quality gear. And you also get more gold and XP, the higher the difficulty is. It seems like the way that they make the game harder is they just give the mobs more health and make them do more damage, which is, that seems to be a trend of how games handle difficulty recently, which I think is not a great way of handling it. But I don't want to deep dive into that here. I just want to the overview of the game. Once you have completed the story, which takes probably less than 5 hours, you will unlock New Game Plus, which resets the story, but you also unlock another difficulty called Insane. Now, I don't know how many times you can beat the game and how many New Game Pluses there are. I've only beat the game one time, and I've gone back to do the Insane difficulty because it does reward you a guaranteed epic item, which is kind of like a light tan quality item. And then there's one more above that called Legendary. I should probably mention the rarity types in the game. I was going to get to that next, but since we're on the topic, let's go ahead and talk about that real briefly. You have Common, which is white, and then there's green, blue, purple, and then the light tan, and then Legendary. So I guess you have 6 rarities. The Legendaries seem to be pretty rare. They don't really have any special Legendary effects, but some of the Legendary weapons look pretty freaking sweet, if I'm being honest with you. And they also roll like 6-7 stats on them. We'll talk a little bit about itemization later on. Let's go ahead and finish up talking about that Insane difficulty after you've completed New Game Plus. Through playing the Insane difficulty, I found myself slowing down and being more thoughtful of my battles and how much I want to chew. And it was nice, but it makes the game a lot more slow paced and almost a little bit boring because you've done all the maps before. But once there's more maps and more randomized events, map modifiers, things like that, I think that could really spice it up. But, you know, just the mobs becoming bullet sponges isn't really that much fun. But, you know, I did it for the guaranteed gear at the end and the higher magic find. I'm assuming there's higher magic find on the higher difficulties anyway. But yeah, that's basically missions, story missions, side missions, how the difficulties tie in, and the map layouts and how all that works. The next thing I want to talk about here, and this is my personal #1 thing I look for in every ARPG game, and that is combat. Primarily, I played the game in third-person mode. I accidentally tabbed into a first-person mode during a mission, and I didn't know how to get out of it. When you hit B, you go into first person, and then I found out after asking on Discord that you hold down B to go back to third person. I don't know why you'd want to do first person in this, but maybe there's someone out there that would enjoy it. It did look a little kind of like Skyrim-y, I guess, but I don't know. I played in third person and really quite enjoyed it. You can tab onto the targets, which does help out as well. But a lot of my time spent, I was using the bow and arrow. Now, what's really cool about this game is you don't have to actually carry around arrows and worry about running out of arrows. Instead, each fire that you shoot with your bow just takes stamina. So all you have to do is manage your stamina bar. All the different basic attacks with all your different weapons just cost stamina, and then when you use skills, those are what cost mana. So you have 2 resources to manage there, and then your health bar as well. Different weapon types in the game, you have one-handed, two-handed melee weapons, and then a shield. You can also get a wand and an offhand weapon. You can also get the bow and arrow that I mentioned and a staff. My personal favorite is the two-handed weapon and bow and arrow. Those are just awesome. I love sniping, and then if I'm getting rushed, I can swap over to the two-hand, do some AoE cleave, and it's just fun to just smash around, to be honest. The last little bit I want to comment here on combat is it just feels nice. My main issue I did have with combat is it seems to be hard to get enough defense to really sustain yourself a lot in melee combat, but I did find later on that I had enough life leech to really kind of maintain myself a little bit. But there's certain things, especially on higher difficulties, that can just do so much damage that it's kind of, you got to be watching out. It's kind of hard to outplay. But then again, that could come down to gear and just a little bit better itemization that I need to do on my part. Managing your stamina through the basic attacks and the mana through your skills is really cool. Once you've drained your mana from your basic attacks, you can then use your skills and drain your mana on those skills, or vice versa. So it's really nice to kind of try to balance. And it's really nice because mana is not just tied to spell and mage skills like Fireball and Firestorm or whatever there is. I think there's a Fire Tornado ability. It's also tied to your melee skills like Whirlwind and the Ground Slam type ability. So it's really nice that you have 2 different resources to balance during your time in combat. A few more things here that I find interesting about the game, and I just want to talk a little bit very briefly about this one, and this is loot and itemization. So I already told you about the rarities. You have white, green, blue, purple, light tan, and legendary, which is red. It's very exciting when you see that red item glowing on the ground because you know that it's going to have a lot of good stats on it. Well, not good, but you know it's going to have a lot of stats, and it's just going to be better than what you already have. I would like to see some sort of legendary effects, like maybe you have one that summons an imp that fights by your side, or one that does a fire trail, you know, just kind of generic legendary effects that we typically see in action RPGs, but this game currently doesn't offer that. And you know, the legendaries are really nice to kind of get you through that hump if you're kind of struggling a little bit with the higher difficulties. It's really exciting and it's something to look forward to. But as far as itemization on the gear goes, I do find it to be pretty basic, which is not bad by any means. There's enough stats in the game to make you think which one you want to kind of try to prioritize. For me, I was always looking for more damage on items and crit rating with a little bit of crit multiplier. That's just to pump out more damage, but there's lots of other things that you could get. Magic Find was another one that was really high on my list just because, legendaries are fun to try to find, and, that's a very important stat, right? So I know we've talked a little bit about your resources, your stamina and mana, and skills and basic attacks. Let's take it one step further here and talk about more of the character customization side of things with your talents. When you open up your inventory here, you can actually see your talents, and you only get 1 skill point to spend per level up, and the max level in the game is level 50. So you're really going to have to make some tough choices here. There's quite a few. I haven't counted how many skill nodes there are or how many points you could possibly spend, but you have a total of 4 different skill trees. When you very first start the game, you're going to have access to the common skill tree, and some of these are gated behind your character level. There's things in here that are very basic, from more health, more mana, more stamina. But where it gets interesting here is you can choose to unlock your alchemy crafting, your advanced crafting for potions, and then you also have the master. So you have novice, veteran, and master alchemy training. You can also get better at collecting plants during the missions. If you don't spec into this at all, a lot of times when you go to harvest a plant, you're just going to fail. So you're going to want to have at least a few points into here. There's even another node down here that has a 50% chance to get an extra reagent while harvesting. I definitely think that that's a nice thing if you're really about the crafting life. I was more chasing different skills and trying to get a little bit stronger in the game. But yeah, there's pretty much basic things here in the common skill tree. You also have the movement speed one, which would be really nice as well later on. Armor, different things like that. And then you have these 3 other skill trees, and there's part of these trees that you have to actually unlock the tree by purchasing a trainer for your hub, your main city. The first hub that you encounter, you can get all of the trainers except for I think 2 or 3 you have to wait until later on in the story to be able to buy. You just buy them with gold, and all you do is you go to the signpost, you click purchase, you buy that trainer, and unlock the skill tree. It sounds a lot cooler than what it really is. It's really simple, and once you've done it, you can then purchase those points in your skill tree. But I think there's like a 2-handed trainer, an assassin trainer, a mage trainer, a 2-handed trainer, and another trainer that I'm forgetting just because it really wasn't that impactful to me during my journey. So we've talked about the common skill tree. Let's talk a little bit about this one, the Idodmg. I don't know what these words really mean, but this is kind of your melee, and then you also have the right side here is kind of more of your mage skills. I've been using Holy Fire. It's really nice to have a heal when you need it, especially so you don't have to constantly be chugging down health potions. When you very first start the game, you do start out with Shield Bash. Now, what's interesting with the skill points here, and I don't know, I found it to be not really annoying, but I had to think more about my build and my progress here, was the skills, some of them require you to have a certain weapon equipped, which makes sense, okay? Like, I'm not complaining at all. It makes perfect sense. Like, if I want to cast Firebolt over here, I have to have a wand or staff equipped, right? That makes sense. Like, I don't want to be able to cast a fireball with the sword and board. That just would be weird. But what's odd about this system is it's very expensive to respec, and you never know what piece of item you're going to find on the ground. You don't know if you're going to find a super awesome 2-handed hammer, or are you going to find a really sweet 1-handed sword? You just don't know, because it's so RNG. Loot is so RNG that it's really hard to plan ahead. Like I want to be a mage or something like that. It's really hard to plan ahead. But, you know, with your weapon slots, you always have at least a melee slot and a range slot. So you know that you can kind of always count on having your archery trees, which I definitely would recommend investing into, the ones that require a bow. Multi-shots are really nice. Piercing shot, I didn't really like it. It was kind of weird to aim. I think that might even be it for bow, to be honest with you. But yeah, this caltrops, these are really OP. You just sprinkle these on the ground and they can step over them and they take a lot of damage really fast. Really nice. This one doesn't actually require a specific weapon type to use. But there's quite a bit here. I know I jumped ahead in the skill tree. I don't want to go too deep here. You can also have auras running during the game. You can have one aura on at a time. This one gives you armor. I've been using the Inner Fire Aura to get 10% increased damage. There's also different blessings and buffs you can get for more mana. There's really quite a lot here. I think there was... Yeah, here's the other one. Rallying Cry is another 5% damage boost. So there's a lot of skills here, and it's nice to have something that you have to kind of think about and plan a little bit ahead. The further on you get down the skill tree unlocks with higher player level. I think, yeah, the highest skill is level 20. But remember, the level cap for the character is level 50, so that's your common, your tank tree, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. And then, I don't even know why they have these broken up, because it really doesn't make sense. I mean, you have these magic abilities over here. So we talked about some of these. Whirlwind's really cool too. Shout. And then you have your final skill tree, which these require you to have an offhand weapon for the most part. Haven't really used many of these. I mean, the game is very, very stingy on skill points. And respecking, actually, the first one's free. But after that, my next respec cost me like 72,000 gold. I mean, it's insane to respec your stuff, and it's a huge commitment. I really wish that I could just, pay like 5K per skill point or something like that, just so I can kind of play around more with all the different skills and abilities. So that's pretty much loot. The last thing I want to talk about here is crafting. When you very first start out, it's very basic. In order to be able to craft potions, I think you can start out with knowing how to craft some of the basic potions, because while you're going through the mission, I should have mentioned this before when we were talking about missions, but you can actually loot herbs and plants while you're going through the maps as well, and these are materials and reagents used to craft potions, which is a really cool feature, seeing as how you can only buy so many potions from the vendor after each mission. It's nice to be able to craft more and just have a backup there. There's different types of potions: healing, mana, stamina, armor. There's ones that give you more regen of all three of your resources. I personally didn't craft a lot of potions just because I was always buying them from the vendor, and I guess it's more out of laziness that I didn't want to sit there and try to swap and kind of micromanage all of my buffs from the potions, but I feel like you'd probably need to for insane mode. The other thing when it comes to crafting is later on in the story, you can actually learn to soulbind your own gear. Remember we talked about that earlier in the video? If your gear is not soulbound and you die, you lose that piece of gear. Later on, you can actually soulbind gear. The higher rarities cost a lot of gold to be able to soulbind, and you also have to have an item of the same rarity. For example, we were trying to soulbind a epic item, which is the light tan rarity. So I would have to have another item of that same rarity to sacrifice, as well as I think it was something like 25,000 gold, which isn't a lot of gold now, but back then I was nowhere really near that much. So if you want to soulbind a full set of armor, you're really going to have to grind and really put in a lot of time. But, I mean, think about this. If you're trying to soulbind legendaries, you're going to have legendaries to sacrifice. So there's really a lot here if you wanted to min-max and find the best gear in the game. Last but not least, there's also a gambler. You can pay 6,000 gold and get a random piece of gear. I actually don't think I gambled at all. I just didn't feel the need to. You get so much loot throughout the missions that I just really didn't see a need for gambling. Maybe if I was totally out of gear, I died and just had some gold that I wanted to use to re-gear, maybe I would consider doing that. But then again, you could just go to vendors and buy gear with already knowing what the stats are on them. So it's definitely a cool feature, but I didn't use it a whole lot. Anyway, this video actually ended up being a lot longer than I thought. I apologize for that. There was more here than I thought, actually, once I got to kind of talking about it. So hopefully if you made it to the end of the video, thank you so much for your time. I hope you guys found something valuable in this video, and who knows, maybe it's a game that you want to pick up. It's $14.99. There's quite a few systems that I did go through here, but just keep in mind there's only 2 main hubs and about 5 different map types. So, after about 10-11 hours, I kind of thought the game got a little bit stale, but it's still very early in its life cycle, and it's a solo developed indie game, so there's more to come. I'm definitely excited to check back when there's more updates and more content to dig into. As it is right now, it's definitely an okay base game, and I think you should support the project, and who knows, it's one of those games that let's hope he keeps going on the project, but at the end of the day, time's going to tell where the game will end up in the future. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and all the content on the channel. It feels so great to be back talking about indie ARPGs. It's just what I love. We also have some Torchlight 3 stuff coming up as well. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.